Thank you and welcome to the Cose WebEd webinar. Today's topic is hiring and attracting talent and will be presented by Richard Padgett. Before we get started, I would like to take a few moments to go over a few housekeeping items. My name is Adina and I will be the webinar organizer for today. We want to make sure that today's presentation is extremely valuable for you. So we ask that you submit questions throughout Richard's presentation using the question bar, the question or the chat feature, and then Richard will stop his presentation and ask me if there's any questions from the audience, and I will ask them on your behalf. So we want it to be very interactive today, so make sure you go in there and ask questions throughout the presentation. Now for the main event, I would like to introduce Richard Padgett. Richard Padgett has a passion for recruitment technology, and innovation within the industry. He has over about 15 years of organizational and sales leadership experience with companies like Xerox and Sharp Electronics. Currently, Richard is the president of JobServe for North America, operating the brands JobServe.com, ComputerJobs.com, ComputerWork.com, JobShark.com, and CareerBoard. Without further ado, I would now hand it over to Richard Padgett.
Dina, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and hopefully, as was stated, we can have some interaction because the goal of this webinar is to discuss attracting and hiring talent. And if you're on here, I would assume that you're looking to hire currently, and I'll be happy to address specific questions, not only things pertaining to what's in the presentation. This is an overall view of utilizing technology and the internet to hire versus a standard post a sign in the store window or word of mouth. So it is an overall view of that, but if there are specific questions that pertain to your hiring needs currently, I'll be happy to address those as well. So I'll just go ahead and jump right into it. So the workshop content basically will have writing an attractive job advertisement, how to reach the right audience for your position, efficiently managing the online hiring process, and then at the end we'll talk about some technologies that will assist you in your success in using technology to hire. So the first thing I want to talk about is where are the candidates coming from? Where are they at? And then from a standpoint of attracting those candidates, which ones turn out to be the most quality? So this is a recent survey. This is not my data. This is actually from some industry analysis. So if you look at the sources of hires, number one is internet job boards. So that would be sites like CareerBoard or Indeed would all be considered internet job boards. So 74%, what this means is in terms of quality hires, when an organization was asked the question, what are your most significant sources of quality hires, 74% of the people polled said internet job boards. You can see where it goes down from there. Company career sites or websites, which we'll talk about later. If your company has a website, it can be a valuable source if you're known in the marketplace or if you have some other branding initiatives. Internal hires, so promotions, you can kind of throw word of mouth into there also. Social professional networks, which we'll touch on here in a little bit. And then the next piece of that is a slide, even though at the top it says professional networks grew to become a top source of quality hires. The main reason I use this slide is you can see that job boards have remained one of the top sources for hire in the United States. And these, again, are quality hires, and this is across all industries, and all business sizes. So this isn't just enterprise or just small business. This is everyone included. So job boards have been and always will be, in terms of quality, a source for quality hires for companies of all sizes. So knowing kind of where they come from and where the landscape sits, these are some of the places that we're going to talk about how you pull from. So again, I assume since you're on the call, you have some need or want to have some understanding about how to attract some employees that will help your business. So since the days of, as I said, holding up a sign or posting in your window, there have been job ads. People used to write job ads in newspapers. Now we write job ads for job boards. The main differentiator there is, one, you tried to write it as concise and use as few words as possible because they charged you by the word. And one is a much larger platform, which is the digital job board and distribution. You have plenty of room to write information, talk about your culture, so there's a big difference there. Unfortunately, we still see lots of HR directors, presidents of companies, owners of small companies writing job ads like they did in the days of newspaper. And so how do we write an attractive ad today? So the first thing is the job title. The most important part of your job ad will be your job title. So you spend some time thinking about what that job title is. It's the first thing they see, and it's also what all job search sites and job boards and other distribution sources will use to deliver that job to candidates. So when also writing the job title, I talked about length some, appreciate the length constraints, different job boards, different places. So if you write a really long job title, that will eliminate it from some distribution channels. But if you keep it under 100 characters or less, you'll be fine. And this is just the title, not the actual description of the job. You want to get in the head of the candidate. Think about what they are searching for, not just what you're looking for. So for example, one thing we see a lot of is if people are looking for sales, they'll write business development manager. Well, if I'm in sales and I'm actually selling things, I'm probably going to search for something like sales. And so not having sales in the title, it would be a mistake if that's who I was looking for, was an actual salesperson. You could have business development manager / inside sales / outside sales, whatever those are, and you'll still come up in search results for that candidates would actually be searching for that job. But just having something like business development manager would be, as I said, a mistake. And sometimes we do outthink ourselves and try to create flashy job titles because we think that will attract talent and compete in the marketplace, when in fact it's less effective because if we get too cute, it doesn't turn up in a search result from a typical candidate. And that's the first thing, is making sure they see the ad. And then you want to make the most of the space that you're given and include alternative titles. Like I said, you can have business development manager, sales, inside sales, outside sales, quota. You can put things in that like that in the title, which will give them the result. Here's an example in technology. Instead of just having a Java J2E developer, you can use the title Java J2E developer / Java developer / Java applications programmer. I think you get the picture. So we want to cram as much information as concisely as we can into the actual job title. Next, you have the job description. That's basically everything else that's left. So we want to write the description with two things in mind: the job seeker and who's actually going to be reading the advertisement, and then they're going to decide, am I going to apply to, would I want to work at this company, and am I going to apply here? And then the job search engines again, companies like CareerBoard and Monster and CareerBuilder, and how they're going to match your advert against the search criteria entered by the job seeker. So it doesn't go, any of the job boards that you've heard of that do a relatively good job also allow keywords to be searched from the job description when candidates are searching for a job. So it's just as important. You want to include the job title in your job description also. So you kind of want to restate the job title towards the very beginning of the ad, and ideally the first line. Most sites weight the job description more heavily, especially the first two lines, and that's true of us as well. You want to keep your job description concise yet readable, and should aim for between 200 and 500 words. Letting the candidates, telling the candidates the skills and secondary skills you're looking for is obviously very important, but also think of it another way in terms of what problems they can solve for you. So people like to solve problems, and having your ad stand out by showing what challenges they may have or what problems that they'll be solving for the company is a good way to have someone feel empowered by that job ad enough to apply. Highlight maybe the challenges they may face in the near term or long term in the position. I know it sounds maybe counterintuitive that you would put something there that may be perceived as negatively, but in reality what happens is, and the data backs this up based off of quality hires, is candidates that see that you've given them what the challenge will be will attract high achievers and people who are more productive in the work environment, and those that are less of a hard worker, quote unquote, or aren't as driven to succeed will be put off by that. So you can somewhat eliminate the people you don't want to apply to the job and hopefully slide the needle towards the more high achieving employees by highlighting a couple of challenges that they'll face immediately and then down the road. And things, and those challenges don't have to be anything telling about your business. It could be that, you know, in some of our career board ads that we've written here, I've put in there that we're a small company compared to the competition, you know, competing in a very large marketplace as a small, locally run company. So that, and they have to work in that environment. So that's a challenge I may highlight in that ad. And then what's really, really important is to give an idea of what the company culture is like. What's it like to work there? What do you value? What do you do that you think they could identify with? This is extremely important when looking at hiring millennials. And so depending on what type of jobs you're looking to hire for, or what type of sector you're in, it may be heavily leaning towards millennials. And um, in any interviews or surveys that millennials have taken, company culture is top 3 in all of them in terms of why they make a decision to apply or work at a given company, especially high-performing millennials. So work-life balance, company culture, and then yes, compensation still falls in the top 3 for millennials, just to throw that out there. Obviously, write plainly and cleanly, avoid as much jargon. Sometimes we have our own internal jargon that we don't want to put in the ad because people don't know what that means. For example, we have our own CRM that we wrote, and it's called Alchemy. If I used that, if I said, proficient in alchemy, it would mean nothing to them except for possibly that they need to know how to turn lead into gold, and that wouldn't make sense for the job. So avoid jargon, and don't outsmart the job seekers. Be specific on the location. A lot of people will put Cleveland. Well, as you know, there's a difference in East and West, and people may identify with that. So being very specific on where the location of the job is at is also important. Highlighting salary and benefits when appropriate, and I say it when appropriate because what I mean by that is when it's competitive. So if you know you can't offer, and sometimes when those positions you can't offer salary and benefits that are not on par with what's out there, it's going to be a challenge recruiting anyway. But you wouldn't want to highlight that. If you are competitive, then you certainly want to highlight that. Job advertisements that have salary and benefits information receive about 70% more applications than those that don't. People are much more apt to apply to something where they know at least a range or where they stand. At this time, I've gone through a couple of slides, and I'll ask if there's any questions.
I don't have any questions from the audience, but I just want to remind everyone, if you do have questions, just ask them to me in the chat feature. I'm the only one that will see that question, and then I will reiterate your question to Richard. So there are no questions, Richard, so you could continue.
I guess I'm doing such a good job. There's nothing
yeah.
else to question. So I'll just continue. Here's a quick, and this will be up on the Cose site, so if anybody wants to review this, you'll have access to this information. Here's just a quick one-pager that you can kind of print out if you'd like, that just says how to write the perfect job post. And it just hits the highlights of everything I just talked about, for the last 10 minutes. Basically descriptive job title, positive company intro, clear, concise role description, specific requirement lists, company benefits. Hiring process is one I didn't touch on. And again, it's one of those things where if you have a hiring process, it's good to put it in there. If you do like what a lot of us have to do in small companies, we have to, do a lot of the training ourselves. Maybe it's not so defined, then obviously you wouldn't put that in there. But people do like to know that the hiring process is a phone interview, a face-to-face interview, and then a team interview, and then, a job offer or moving on with the job there. Company background at the end of the ad, just a little bit about the company and who you are. And again, that's where you could hit some of the culture and things like that. And you can see the checklist of avoid jargon, be specific, don't exaggerate. We do see a lot of ads where, and I'm sure if you went and looked at our site, you could see some ads of maybe some companies you compete against or that you're familiar with in the area, and you read it and go, yeah, right. Candidates do that too. So if companies exaggerate the type of job it is, the position, again, you might attract the wrong person, but also the right people are going to see that exaggeration as a negative. So you're going to thereby eliminate the more intelligent, active, understanding candidates by doing that. So it's a big no-no. And then keep it short, and by short I mean just enough to deliver all of this information. I wouldn't consider them to be short, but as short as you can to deliver all of this information to the candidate. So then that's your outreach to the world of candidates and digital or technology hiring is going to be your advertisement. There's a lot of other things that go into that I didn't touch on, like videos and embedded videos that we can put in those type of ads, and other companies can as well. But for the most part, you're going to create an ad that is your avatar to the candidate space out there, and writing it in a way that that, and it's going to go out to the world and be your information to them is just, it's important to do. And so now what I'm going to talk about is you have that. Now what do I do with it? So when advertising a job online, most recruiters and larger companies will post the role to more than one job board. Very few just use one board or one outlet. It is a very costly but effective strategy to maximize the audience that the job reaches. So obviously the more places I advertise, the more candidates could possibly see it. But in reality, for most smaller companies or even mid-sized companies, it's just not realistic to think that they're going to have multiple contracts with multiple job boards that they have to manage and then post to. There are some technologies that can help you do that, but if you have reoccurring hiring needs, that's when you would look at something like that. So then what you want to do is, to try to get the most bang for your buck, is be careful with the job boards you do select, and favor job boards with built-in networks or associations. So for example, all of our sites, including CareerBoard, have a distribution channel to roughly 4,300 other niche, local, regional, and sector sites throughout the country, not just in Cleveland or just in some of where our other offices are at, but throughout the nation. So in that vein, you would post a job to CareerBoard or your advertisement, and then we would send that out to several hundred, if not thousand, job boards all over. And then that, again, broadens your reach without having to have multiple contracts and very expensive management software from that standpoint. And JobGate is one of the popular distribution networks that has 4,000 websites, as I touched on. And just to give you an idea of the size of that, JobGate receives over 60 million unique visitors a month. So that's a pretty nice number in terms of eyeballs looking at your ads. Social media integration is important. Again, especially for certain job titles, but also things like a barista. If you want to hire a waitress, social media integration is extremely important, which we also do, so that you can share those positions to your Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, any other technologies you may use from a social media standpoint. And again, we fill positions everywhere from a waitress all the way up to a COO utilizing social media. So it does work, but it is part of the whole picture. There's also social professional sites. So these are organizational sites where people identify. So Cose could be considered a social professional site where you can also distribute jobs. CareerBoard has a relationship there with Cose as an example, but there's also multiple different types of niche or defined professional social interaction sites that job boards can tap into, so that you can reach those type of talent that you might think would be difficult to find. And then integration with traditional media outlets such as television can help you reach a passive audience. So if for example, we have a relationship with Fox 8, and we do the job of the day on Fox 8 every day. And so those are people who are making their coffee or at home for lunch, or maybe they don't have a job and they're watching the news, and they didn't think they wanted to look at a new position today, but they see it and they say, okay, I'm going to go check that out. And then they come to the job site and they may even apply to other jobs. So when you're overall looking for a strategy for online recruitment, you want to have, these basic things. Somebody that has distribution, has other tie-ins, can let you easily share to your social sites and distribute that job as broadly as possible. Any questions?
We have a quiet group today, so no questions.
Okay. I'll keep moving. Okay, and so then now we've written that ad, we've figured out how to, post that job and distribute it as effectively as possible to as many outlets as possible, so that we can have as many eyeballs as possible. Now what do we do when people start applying, or how do they apply? So for example, you could post an ad on Craigslist and put your phone number in there, and then people are just going to call you and you have no idea who they are. There is no vetting. They just call your number and say, hey, I saw your ad on Craigslist and I'd like to apply for the job. And that could be an effective strategy. But if you go the posting route with actual digital postings, what you're going to start having is incoming applications. So people are going to send you their resume. And how do you go about that if you got, let's say, 50 to 100 and let's say you just had 2 or 3 positions you're advertising for. That becomes a fairly daunting number of resumes. So you want to utilize technologies to disposition or categorize resumes. If you can do that, it's a massive advantage. Now, most of us don't have, Fortune 1000 companies' money that spend $300,000 or $400,000 on a software that does that for them. So there are that'd be considered an applicant tracking system, and that's what large companies and recruiters use typically. But they are expensive to purchase, integrate, and maintain. And so, again, it just doesn't make sense for most companies, and especially with sporadic hiring needs. So you want to look for a job board that when you post your job, you have an account with them, and they include a customer dashboard. And there's several, not just us. Multiple companies will give you a customer dashboard that has some sort of resume organization and disposition capabilities. So for example, on ours, you can go in and click that you like these or you don't like these. So you can group resumes by the ones you want to look back at. You can move them along in the process, and that comes along with the job posting included. Some competitors charge for that feature, and then also that kind of can store your resumes for a period of time. And it gives you, just as I said, a way to manage that. Reporting of performance metrics. So when you're looking at it, again, if you use something like Craigslist, you really don't have a way to say, was this an effective ad, and how many people actually applied, and what's the statistics look like. So you want to look for somebody that will give you information and data around the effectiveness of your campaigns. And you can look at partners that will deliver free and automated or user-generated reports like we do. Most of our competitors in the space offer some sort of reporting down to at least things like job view, how many times your job came up, which would be considered a view, how many times somebody clicked on it, and then how many times somebody finished the apply. And so looking at that so you understand, when you're spending money on these things, you want to make sure that we're able to measure the effectiveness of it. Now, obviously, the ultimate effectiveness is I hired somebody and now I don't need the ad anymore. But still along the way, having access to reports like that is beneficial. So really kind of to wrap that up, we've placed our ad, we've gotten it into a good distribution so that we were getting as much traffic as possible. We have at least some sort of process of hiring, of dispositioning those incoming applicants, and then we're going to go to our traditional model of calling people and interviewing them, or bringing them in and interviewing them. And then ultimately, hopefully, we make a quality hire that helps drive our business. Now what I'll do is kind of sum up here at the end some of the useful technologies, and again, this will be on the Cose site for future use if you'd like to check it out. You can go to www.careerboard.com. FormSwift is a site that allows you to kind of create job ads for free. There's a paid version and an unpaid like anything else. By the way, on CareerBoard.com, if you go in there and hit post a job, there's a tutorial that walks you through the entire process. But FormSwift will do the same thing off of CareerBoard, independent of what job site you like to use. Indeed is a good site. We're partners with those guys, and so we share postings. For example, if you post on CareerBoard, your job also goes to Indeed, and vice versa. We take some of their local jobs and help them deliver on those. But that is a good resource because it's got a huge database that you can actually go in and look at, which I didn't really touch on in this session, but going and sourcing candidates from a resume database standpoint is also very useful strategy in terms of utilizing technology to hire. Google is a fantastic resource, especially if you know if it's a very defined position like accountant, and you can Google put together Boolean strings for accountants in this zip code, and of course you'll get some LinkedIn results and things like that. But in looking at for talent, you can utilize Google as a source for sourcing talent. There's a whole multiple articles online that will show you how to use Google to your advantage, and from almost a free standpoint, basically. LinkedIn, same thing. Go into LinkedIn and look for people that are doing the job that you want them to do already and appear to be successful. Obviously, LinkedIn charges a tremendous amount of money for you to be able to contact those people directly, but if you can find them on there, then you can go and put their information into Google, or if you have a CareerBoard account, into CareerBoard, and you can find that person's contact information and reach out to them individually. So you can leverage these different technologies and sites, both from a posting, distribution, and letting people apply to you, also in terms of generating candidates by sourcing them between Google, LinkedIn, Indeed, CareerBoard, things of that nature. So hopefully that was helpful. Again, if anybody has any specific open positions or positions that they're trying to hire for and would like to discuss that specifically, I'm open to do that. I had planned on about 30 minutes for the presentation and about 15 to 30 minutes of questions. So if you do, feel free. You can also reach out to me directly through email, or you can give me a call. That's our main number. You may get one of our consultants, and we'll be happy to walk you through whatever position is you have individually and what we think that would generate, time frame wise, what the cost looks like on that, and generally help you get a good posting. We know what works. These guys are professionals here, and we have a team dedicated to customer support. So with that said, I appreciate everybody's attendance, and if you need anything, you know how to reach me.
Thank you, Richard, for your time.
Yep, thank you.
This concludes the webinar. Thank you.